So, for how
So,
long have you been writing?
sorry, Ashok.
I was asking, how long have you been writing?
I've been writing since 2009 continuously, but otherwise it's a very old hobby. It goes a long way back.
Right. So, when you were in service, you were writing at that time also.
In service, I used to write military stuff, tactics, strategy, submarine warfare, anti-submarine warfare. So, the career soldier, you do not have time for this kind of stuff. Not possible.
Good evening, friends. This is Shishruta from Mahava Readers and Writers Club. So we are here with another session with Kochery C Shibu's new book, Amongst the Believers. So Professor Ashoke Viswanathan, he's going to moderate the session. Very quickly, I would first love to introduce Professor Ashoke Viswanathan. So he's a national and international award-winning filmmaker who is currently professor and dean at Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, Kolkata. He has directed more than 150 film projects, including feature films, documentaries, shorts, and television shows. Apart from the national awards, he had 5 Indian Panorama entries at IFFI, is a Charles Wallace Scholar at Cambridge, and has won the Dishahari, BFJA Kalakar, and JC's awards besides the Silver Torchlight and award at Pyongyang. He has been a visiting professor at Tufts University, Boston, and Monmouth University, New Jersey. Thank you, Ashokda, for this is I think your uh, second session with Shibu. You have done it before also, if you do remember that. So thank you so much for being here with us. And now I'm going to introduce author Kochery C Shibu. Kochery C Shibu, the best-selling and award-winning author of Men and Dreams at In the Dauladhar and Faith and Beloved, is a graduate of the prestigious National Defense Academy, Khadakswasla. He has served in the Indian Navy and commanded 2 warships. Post his retirement, he has executed hydroelectric projects in the Kochery River Basin in Karnataka, Beas River Basin in Himachal, and Teesta River Basin in Sikkim. He holds a postgraduate degree in defense studies from Chennai University and an MA English Literature from Pune University. Shibu has changed track from the snow-clad mountains to the blue oceans and has been associated with the setting up of a shipping company in India. Amongst the Believers, a suspense thriller, is his third book. A passionate and committed writer, Shibu creates a magic world of fiction built around a well-researched background. Thank you so much, Shibu, for trusting Ahava. And over to you, Ashokda. We are all eager
Thank you,
to
Shishruta.
watch this session. Thank you.
Congratulations to Shibu once again for yet another book. And the style has changed a little, I feel, from the time I read the first novel. This is more detailed, very much more detailed. The cast of characters and the color palette is more enriched, and it's very much a happening book. At the same time, it retains the emotional elements that were there in his earlier work, which is very, very interesting. There is tragedy, of course. Life is full of these joys and woes and sniffles, but as O. Henry says, mostly the sniffles. But anyway, it is, in a sense, a very violent book, violent novel, and also it deals a lot with international politics. So, my first question to you is that did you do a lot of research for this particular story?
So, thank you, Ashok. Yes, the answer is yes. I mean, every book, the research is at the very, very backdrop or the fundamental foundation framework for everything. So, as a practice, I believe that anything that you write has to be well researched, and any author, and or for that matter, any reader, even if he or she is reading about an event which has already happened, should get something more than what is normally or easily available, off the shelf. So that part is very important. And a lot of the times when you build backgrounds, I believe the story is fictional, and it's a fiction novel. So story and characters are fictional, but the background is, as it exists, or to the extent it is well researched, and people can correlate, and they will know that this background that you're talking about does exist, and very much so the way you have described it.
Did your background with the forces help you in getting some of the information regarding countries which are not so easily accessible? In India, like you say, Bosnia or even Pakistan, places like that. We are not so much aware of what is happening in Iran, and you've talked about all of that in Sarajevo and all that. Did your background help you?
Of course, by virtue of being from the armed forces background, wherever any kind of warfare takes place, it's a matter of interest, and you do keep track. But I'll put a caveat here that all the information that I've used in the book is from the open source. So that is one thing that I've been very careful about. That whatever is written is whatever available information. But the imagination part, the fictional part which you've added, that of course will come with the perspective of the individual and the kind of experience that you've had. So to that extent, yes, by virtue of, I will say something like this, that in the armed forces, we used to do something called war gaming. So war gaming means you take two teams, one side is USA, one side is India, or one side is Russia and one side India, one side China, India, Pakistan, India, all kinds of combinations. So this is to assess capabilities. It's not the intention. We are not going to, there's no intention to fight with anyone, but you should assess that should the eventuality arise, how would you and what could you? What are the limiting conditions? So there, the difference is that you have a team of maybe 15 or 20, kind of sharp officers who are working together from various domains and pulling it together to write a situation and a scenario. So when you write a novel of this kind, it's single-handed. You have to write that full thing yourself. You're on both sides the spectrum. So to that extent, yes, the bandwidth required, the research required, and the time involved is quite a bit.
I was finding it very fascinating that you were trying to get into the minds of people who are not very close to you, like, say, the jihadis, or what is the jihadi mentality. So, how did you manage to do that?
See, a lot of the times, finally, what I say is that anything that a human being does, it doesn't matter whether it's in the military or as a part of a terror organization, or maybe in the normal walk of life, and any walk of life for that matter. Finally, human beings are human beings. So there will always be an element of human beings in it. So let's say, for example, when LTT started and they started suicide terrorism as a method of warfare, initially it caught everyone by surprise, because that you could not believe that you have people who are willing to die for a cause, or that itself as a warfare, because then it becomes very difficult, because your normal society and your setup of the world is that on a premise that everyone values his life and no one would like to kill himself unless he's forced to.
Hmm.
So this is a very different thing, wherein you're summing that wherein people are going to motivate on the basis of value system. In many ways, it has got some similarities to the armed forces. In many ways, in the sense that in the armed forces, you're on the right side. You're fighting for the right cause. You're doing it for a nation, and there's so many things are there. But finally, it comes down to that in any battle, not everyone, the nation may have won the war, but at the cost of many lives. So in many of these conflicts which take place at individual positions, it is not always that you're on the winning side. It's like a boxing match. Both sides get hit. Finally, one side wins, that's different. So understanding the psychology of the guy whom you're fighting is very important. If you have to, I use this terminology. It is used by one of the car makers. You must have heard of this. It's called knowing you is knowing how. That's what a Toyota car maker says. But it's true in any field. So if you want to fight someone, the more you know about him, you know what his actions are going to be or likely to be. And if you can predict his actions, then you can take him on. And vice versa. If your actions are predictable, you are not likely to succeed in the field. That's the thing about fundamentals about warfare. Your actions should not be predictable. So if what we did in the 71 war, if we did in the 99 war, we will get wiped out. What we did in the 19, if you try to repeat in 15, you will again get wiped out. So you have to change the times, and you should not allow someone to predict what you're going to do. So that's the concept. So
yes, that's a very interesting take on military strategy. I myself have been very much interested in intelligence, which is a very important area of military strategy. I had an uncle, he was in the army. We knew him as Colonel Hariharan. He was from Madras, my father's first cousin. And we used to talk a lot, and very knowledgeable he was. That is one. Secondly, I think we've had this conversation before, but I'm repeating it for those who haven't. I studied at the Film and Television Institute of India, Pune, and we used to take these periodic trips to Kharagvasla, which was close by. So there also I had the opportunity to observe. And finally, I wrote a play called Ikattar Ki Ladai, Ek Vijay Gatha, about the 71 war, of which you spoke of just now. So I'm extremely interested in these areas, these subtle shades of military strategy, the kind of strategy that Jacob would have used in the final, final blow that was given that, really finally did lever the whole thing in favor of India and Bangladesh. So, in your book, apart from military strategy, another thing which I found in your earlier book also is that it has a vast canvas. Normally, your novels have this vast canvas. I would even go so far as to say that they have an epic dimension because, first of all, you have several characters and characters of flesh and blood, important characters, significant characters. Secondly, they move, they don't stay in one place. So there's an international quality and feel to the novel. And it was there in the earlier novel also that things are happening, let's say, here in this novel in Kerala, which might be your home place, I suppose. But very important, Cochin and Angamalai, I think you mentioned, the airport, and then Bombay, suddenly off to Bombay, and then more internationally, going off, mentioning Iran and taking the route to Bosnia, and then you have the Russian intervention, the language. This gives it a vast canvas. Do you like working in such a large canvas?
I would put it, let's say, I'll put the other way around. Whatever requires for the story that you write, you have to research and bring in the canvas. So it is, a lot of the stuff is based on, kind of taken from events which have taken. There are people, something similar have happened to people where people have escaped and have had to traverse through very difficult times, very difficult places. And so in many of the ways, whatever you're depicting in the novel is a slice of reality in each of those events. It may not be the same individual, but okay, individuals in various places have gone through similar experiences. Bosnia Herzegovina and those tragic events when it was happening, it was even for those battle-hardened guys, it was mind-numbing, the amount of violence that happened there. The what I would call the senseless killing, some of it. Then one starts wondering what they were better off the way they were before they broke up. Such price. I mean, we are the only two countries. Why I brought that up before is the only two countries who have suffered on the basis of a religion, where a country has been partitioned on the basis of religion. They are one, we are the other. Only two, unfortunate. And that's one of the reasons I thought, we tend to forget that, how much problems it can create. The Britishers found it very convenient. And the unfortunate part is they are the ones who divided the country, made us fight, and they have got out, and we are still fighting with each other, and they're sitting by the side, as with no blame on them. Very smart. I mean, even to the example, for example, that since you said you talked about this, in the Second World War, the 1970, that means before the Second World, towards the end of the First World War, the Britishers had sought the support of all the Jews in the world with a promise that they will give them a homeland. And the homeland was originally proposed to be in Israel, that Palestine area. So in 1917, all the Jews in the world supported British, and it included all the Jews in Europe. So when Germany got defeated, so there was a feeling among the Germans that the Jews who were part of them and industrialists and businessmen, though they have not directly supported British in any way, other than supporting their homeland, they found it very easy to put a blame on them, saying that these are the guys who cheated us, they betrayed us. When the nation was at British, they declared their support for them. It was nothing to do with the battle. It was for their cause. They wanted a homeland for the Jews. But that never gets highlighted anywhere. When you talk about let's say the massacre of the Jews, no one ever talks about that, they were considered, they kind of betrayed their nation. When the war was ongoing, they declared the support to the opposite side, whatever be the ground. So that never gets highlighted. So the people who write the stories, you hear a lot about the kind of atrocities committed on them. But if you bring out this one fact, some of the things you will not like it. For example, if in the 1962 war, let's say India and China are fighting, and if all the communists say that we are supporting Russians, or sorry, the Chinese, nobody will like it. So even though one or two of them said it, no one forgets that. It's not taken kindly. So these are issues, so one of the reasons I've tried to bring out, I believe that, sensitizing people about events of the past and retaining some of them is important. So, or even for that matter, one of the reasons I brought out that, the Russia-Ukraine war, senseless war. There was no need for it, but it was orchestrated for very other reasons, which I would not like to open up here, but okay. Some of it I've given a very broad hint as to, so the discerning readers, they can always make out as to what I think is a cause for it, but still going on. So we do not know which way it landed, but definitely that is not a war that is called for. Maybe 100,000 Russians dead, 200,000 Ukrainians dead for what? So it's, all I can say is that, the American war machine has its limitations, and wherever they go, it's only destruction. They never do any good. It's whether it is
In fact,
Iran, whether it's Iraq.
yes, if I may interrupt, sorry. Just read an kind of interview, I would say, not an interview, it was a dialogue which Donald Trump was having. You might have seen it also. He's saying that if I become president, I'll just take 24 hours and I'll end the Ukraine war, So it seems so simplistic and so stupid, such a serious matter, the way you're saying so many 100,000 Russians and Ukrainians have died. And here you are saying, I'll just take 24 hours and I'll finish this off. It sometimes shows how insensitive some of these great American leaders are, so-called.
I agree, but then as I said, in my book, it's always what I call a slice of life, and not really about viewpoints on people, because if you get into that takes away the punch of a fiction novel. But the whole idea is that one of the things that is also I'm trying to bring out to the readers is that nothing is what it seems. That means when you play internationally, what you see is not what is being scripted. You do not know what is being scripted in the background. There's always an end game. So games are played in strategies. Sometimes it'll be testing out. Sometimes it'll be giving an incentive. As in politics, as much as in politics, it's a mind game. So if you again, the same thing happens, that if you are not able to read what they're up to, you'll be running into trouble. So a lot of this international, the international relations, espionage, and a lot of these movements, things do happen far more, in the lines that what has been brought out in the book. The let's say the events that have happened, there is always a perception that is given after the event. What happened in the background? There'll be a lot of trade-offs. Some by design, some by default. So the book, I have tried to bring out some of these, which to the reader to get a feel of what are the other things that have gone into it, and in a fictional scenario that could have gone into it, and things like that. For that matter, a 26/11 Mumbai attack it's not possible. It's what we call as pure military commando operations. If you look at it analytically, militarily, it's a very well executed commando operation. It's a commando raid. The only difference is they're not sent men in uniform. They have decided train them, send people, and it's like the But it's the whole thing is structured like that. So it could not have happened without the help of the army being into it to the hilt. Not possible. So you may not be able to prove it. That's different. But those who know the domain will know that it's not possible for a few terror groups and a few the fanatics to do that kind of stuff without full-fledged military training, military support, and the full military organizational benefit to it.
Can we
So
go
that
one step further and say, yes, full military support, but were there any insiders also involved who might have helped this operation?
so that becomes now the intelligence game. What the whole thing is about. So anything which happens in your two nations, especially neighboring nation, nothing will happen in isolation. They will always have your intelligence people will be there in your neighboring countries and vice versa. I mean, so that network and that support system will be there. To what extent, to what degree, some of it has come out, some of it may not come out. And of course, that time we had the Indian Don who has gone from that side. So obviously the underworld connections are there. Those are things which will which would have definitely helped in executing those kind of a commando operations. But what it means to say is that when you write in a book of this stature, the whole idea was to give a perspective on how these operations are done, or characters are fictional but backgrounds are real, and what people go through. And I think a lot of the time, in all this excitement, the suffering of the average Afghan citizen, how much they have suffered from both sides. Whether it's a suicide terrorist who go and blows himself up, or the Americans who are coming with the drone, it's the common citizen who gets hit. Same thing it happens in Ukraine. And then, of course, there are so many things which happen in the background. The drug trade, the sectarian violence. So many things play into it.
And coming back to the characters in your book, another very interesting facet of the writing are these principal three characters whose lives intersect at different moments in different places. There's Nanda, of course, the protagonist in a sense. There is Khusru, the anti-hero, if you may call him that. And there's Rekha, Dr. Rekha. And we have the subsidiary characters like Nandini Kutti and others who appear. Now, how do you look at the character of Khusro, whom I find to be most interesting among these?
Yeah. So one of the things what I am trying to bring out here is that in any of this, let's say any of these places where the so-called terrorism takes place, a lot of the times a good intending citizen gets drawn into it. So however good his intentions are, but he lands up in a situation that whatever he does, whatever he tries, finally he's on the wrong side. So again, the human aspect that I was trying to bring about, to say that it's like saying that it's like can there be a good thief? Because by nature, if you say if someone is stealing things, okay, no, he can be a Robin Hood, all right. You can be a Robin Hood one time, you may not be a Robin Hood every time, but somewhere you're doing something wrong by the norms of the society. So one of the things I was trying to bring out is to give, again, as I said, that I have not met a black and white person in my whole life. At least I have not met. They maybe, including Gandhiji, I don't think, I don't consider anyone black and white. Everyone has got shades of gray. The degree varies. And when you go to one extreme, like maybe like we go to Mahatma Gandhi, yes, it's called a Mahatma because that shade is very, very non-existent or nearly non-existent. So you could go to the other extreme, and there are others who will take to extreme violence for no sense. But a lot of the times, there are many of the characters, in many of the times, it's not always that you're able to do the right things. It comes with shades of gray. And even, that a terrorist, there are some shades of good in him. Some places, sometimes. So the idea was to bring out a human element. So that to say that, finally, even if he's going and blowing himself up or fighting or whatever he does, still it's a human being. So any human being is there will be some human element. It may not be the right one, and by the norms of the society, or he may be misguided youth, whatever. So that's why I said, I have tried not to be judgmental, because it's a fictional character with a certain hue and shade. That's how I put it.
And the character of the doctor also is very interesting, the way she thinks and her affections. Can you talk a little about Dr. Rekha?
Yeah, I suppose that is again, these are things, which, what do you say that, again, the same question, that as we traditionally say, that love is blind. So it's, it is really very difficult to quantify as to why does, some of the actions, like, sometimes not only it's blind, it is maybe even senseless. But sometimes when you're put in situations, it does happen to people in the past. When you're in captivity, you end up being sympathetic towards your captor. Sometimes they fall in love. Rare, but they do. So these are situations where what happens in individual and how it plays up later in their life. That has been again some of the areas which one thing, like, what people do not talk about is, so in any especially in any kind of violent scenarios, invariably it's always the women who end up being on the receiving end, whether it's a war in Ukraine, whether it's a war in Gaza now, or whether it was a war in Afghanistan. So in various reasons. So women, the innocent women, many of them get caught as victims of it. In almost every battle, that has been the case. It has not changed. So then some of them who fall into this, it's not normally much written about. The idea was again bring about a perspective on that character, and if someone go through that, what can happen, and what are the challenges involved, and how it takes place. Again,
In fact, you
it's
mentioned the Stockholm syndrome also in one particular reference.
yeah, yeah, sure, because that is there. Stockholm syndrome is very much there. That is a well-established norm. But I'm just trying to say that this is not to say again to say what she or he. I mean, in this case, she, what she has done is right or wrong. In a fictional, this is not it is not to take a high moral ground or moralistic approach, or it's not moral policing. But all that I'm saying is that it's not always easy when these kind of things happen and characters land up in war scenarios, or you're kidnapped for no reason. So sometimes that also happens, that someone thought of making you a pawn, then it doesn't work out, then you're just you're left there in the open, and then you have to fend for yourself. So a lot of the compulsions of situations, and how human beings uh, cope with it or try to live with it, as the case may be.
I think as a genre, you seem to be excelling in the espionage genre because you have used the perfect combination. You have the international politics in the background, particularly at this particular point of time, critical point of time, when the Ukraine-Russia war is raging, war in Gaza, other places of conflict, India, Pakistan. In such a scenario as this, you've been able to create a text which is, I think, quite believable, which you wanted to. Although the characters are fictional, as you say, such a situation may well exist and perhaps does exist. And you've been able to create that atmosphere. So, congratulations for that also. The violence is also quite graphic at moments, and you've described it very well, well described. And your knowledge of military warfare must have helped you. What about with the firearms and the Kafelnikovs and all that? Kashelnikovs and all
That
that? Yes.
that is I mean, to any military man, that is, I guess, it's like your back of the palm. That comes easy. That is not a difficult part at all. But it is not just knowing the technical stuff. You will know a lot of weapons, small arms, what we just call them generically as small arms, whether it's a .38 or a .45 or a Kalashnikov or an Uzi or an AK-47. So a lot of this stuff you would have handled, and as part of your life, as if you're, it's like handling, and maybe even a mobile phone at times. Actually, that much you must be into it. But that's one side of the story. That's different when you're there, when you're doing it. But it's equally important. That means, again, what I am trying to do is to say that, that a lot of the implications are the other way around. So if somebody is being given a training like this, who's training him? So that's what that is what I was kind of highlighting before, that many of these things that does not happen because military warfare, and whenever there are military organizations existing, so if you're using your, let's say, this kind of people for military purposes, then they will be trained also. They have to be trained well. So obviously there is an organization and the organizational structure behind it. So a lot of the things that is said is also quite real. I mean, in many cases, people know that it does happen in Iran, it does happen in Pakistan, it happens in many places. And the second part is ISI as an intelligence agency after the Afghan-Russia war, 79 to 89. They were groomed and brought up by the CIA. They have come up quite well. So as an intelligence agency, they're there. You must be aware of them, and they're very capable lot. And they were thriving, the drug empire, which gives them enough slush funds to do a lot of things. And they're running a country. I mean, the country is, literally, normally we say that, every country has an army. There you say an army has a country. So that's that is there. So that one of the reasons of bringing this out is a lot of this information is, again, for the benefit of the reader. Some of them who are not exposed to this kind of life will definitely find it interesting now that a lot of things
Yes.
are.
You must have done a lot of, or you might be knowing already, but you must have done also research on RAW, RAW, and the workings of the RAW, bureau and all that.
Whatever is in the available open domain, yes, I said, all the research that has been done is whatever is available in the open domain. So what, in simply put, a lot of the times you conjecture, it's not too difficult. It's like, it's if you see an event taking place and you know the clues, then you can put a situation in the background and say that, if this has happened, it's like in Mahabharata, there's a saying, if Kijak is the one who's got killed, only Bhim could have killed him. So that is, they say, that's a saying. People say that if the Kijak has been killed, then only Bhim could have killed him. So Bhim is in the picture, whether it's seen or otherwise. So it's something like that. So it's an inference-driven kind of thing. So a lot of the research is based on that. Events which are reported, and then you put it back together and then make a scenario out of it. So a lot of the times it is it's about not conjecturing. It's about putting it together. If you know the events which have happened, and then the background, you do a lot of research into what was the background at that point in time when it happened. Then these are the events which have taken place. Then you can say for this event to take place, the options are 1, 2, or 3. So if these options have to be there, somebody has to be involved. So therefore, ABC. That's what I call, we call it wargaming. So it's a reverse engineering of wargaming here. So that's, my friends who are listening to this from the military will understand what I'm talking. You just need a situation. Very, very many times, like say, for example, even when you do intelligence analysis, so we do something called a spectrum analysis. You get one input from at a time, in a place. You note it. You get a second input, time and space, and you say, then you have a pattern. He says that if the enemy movement is like this, the next one will come from here. So you do 2, 3 patterns. You can kind of infer from the third input as to what is the likely formation of the enemy or movement of the enemy. And that's the same logic which is used even in intelligence. It's in any of the the thought process of maneuvers and counter maneuvers.
Yes, you were talking a little while back about ISI. Would you have written somewhere that I'm sure you go by that the ISI is second only to the CIA in terms of their efficiency and their competence in
CIA
the
and
area
Mossad.
Mossad.
After CIA and Mossad. I mean, see that it used to be actually CIA, KGB. They were kind of as good till the Russians broke up the KGB. So after that, KGB has gone, and they have not brought in the new agency to that level. They have not, maybe. They have not had money resources. While there are other agencies, ISI in our area, they have initially was propped up by the CIA, but then they've established themselves well in that area. Now, in this area, South Asian area or South Asian Middle East area, they're pretty well established, well networked, well established. So also are all the intelligence agencies. But I'm just saying this again that they've been groomed and they have done many successful operations. So of course, none of this will be in black and white. These are all this given as a perception as seen by a character or the assessment that is seen in the book. But then that's a lot of the time, because again I say that whatever information is used is what is available in the open domain, and then you interpret what any event has happened, an incident has happened, a reported event or an incident. You see two, three places where it has happened, how it has happened. Then you can put back and work backwards and then see, and that's how this worked out. So that calls for a lot of research. You do need to do a lot of research to get to know and possible scenarios, and then only the reader will find it convincing. Otherwise, it may sometimes it may sound as a hypothesis or even maybe just a conjecture.
No, I think that's the key phrase. What you said is that then only the viewer will be convinced. And we are convinced, yes. I thought. Because you put in the details. You put in the details, like in the very first, in the beginning, when Nanda has to go to Bombay, you've mentioned that he went to a military base somewhere in Kerala, and it was a military flight, wasn't it, which took him?
And I just said an unmarked flight. So more than that, I would not like to say.
Okay. Correct.
This could not be correct.
So these are the interesting details, because for the common viewer, it's very difficult, things that happen in espionage, how sometimes the passport can be manufactured and things like that, and a visa can be procured. We don't know that, but it is possible if you are working for RAW or for ISI, or any one of those agencies. So that's come out very well in a very believable way. At the same time, there's a lot of passion in your book, and I think I'd like to end with this. A lot of passion, a lot of passion and emotion. The emotion is very strong, which is what drives the book. As you said, it's not just the technical details. Just the Kalashnikov will not do. What is important is the heart. The heart is very important, and the characters do have a heart. And they're pursuing it for different reasons. Sometimes they are forced to do what they're doing, to come out of the problem that they are. They are forced to carry out the functions that they've been assigned. Sometimes they fall into their, own traps, as it were. So in that, the passion, the emotion has come out very well. And I'd like to congratulate you for that also. So thank you very much, Shibu, for a very interesting book. Again, a book which has really touched us, those who've read it and will read it. I would recommend it very strongly because it's interesting, it's very exciting, it's a gripping story, and it holds your attention. At the same time, there are lots of, resonances, messages that are playing throughout in this troubled situation that we are in. So that makes it contemporary and very relevant too. This is what I feel.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being with us today.
So we'll wait just for 1 or 2 minutes, because there are a few questions that we will be taking up right now. Bookners has asked, which character is the closest to you, Khusru, Nanda, or Rekha? So you can answer briefly, Shibu, for our viewers.
See, as an author, all characters are equally dear to me. It's like they're all my children. I mean, varying sizes and shapes, but they're all my children. So I have no particular bias for anyone. As a matter of fact, even the smallest of characters, the amount of time spent sometimes maybe more in fleshing out a small character in the novel than the main guy or the mainstream character. So to me, all of them are equally dear. I do not have any particular choice. Okay.
3 more questions quickly. I'll take Neha Raj. She has asked, I have read your book, but do you also prescribe reference books to read along with your novel? And what does your bookshelf look like in 2024?
No, no. I think it's. I am not interested. Sorry. Okay. Like Ashoke brought out, this book is on a very vast spectrum, and
Yeah.
it does require a reader to have some at least some GK, broad GK, when you're reading this. But it is not meant to be read with a book of reference. No, it's a fiction novel. Of course not. But I do a lot of research in my as part of my writing. I do a lot of research, but most of it is various books and non-fiction books. I don't read. I have not. I've stopped reading fiction since 2009 when I started writing my first book. So that's basically just to be sure that your style is not affected.
Okay.
But yes, this book is not meant to be read with a book of reference alongside. No, it's a fiction novel meant to be read and assimilated. Of course, Mr. Ashoke has brought out a lot of things. He has caught on to the nuances and the research which have gone into it, which an average reader may not be able to, but it is meant for them to read and maybe get a perspective, a feel of this scenario and events which is taking place.
Just two more questions very quickly. Ruma Chakraborty, she has asked you, does retelling of sensitive historic issues require you to take an extra care not to ruffle collective feathers?
Of course, of course. See, one of the things that of course, any author who writes, your freedom of expression is not about stepping on somebody's toes. Never. You have to be very careful, and and that's one of our challenges also. I mean, I felt this in this book, in the previous two books also. That unfortunately for us, the reading of history has to be from a responsible account. So, and at least in my case, whatever among the best that I've come across is Dr. Ishwari Prasad. Mr. Ashoka may be familiar with him. He has got 3 volumes on Indian history, the old, the medieval, and the modern. I found him to be among the lot till date, the most reliable source of history. But I agree with that question that you have to be very sensitive and very careful when you write. The idea is not to see. One of the problems today is that history changes from one TV channel to another TV channel. It changes from one newspaper to another newspaper. It changes from one blogger to another blogger. Cannot be so. So
Right.
you have to look at history from a credible account, which in the case of India, I have been following this, but a lot of research goes in now. One thing I try to do is to say that not to take anything on face value, and idea is to bring in the thought of applying your mind while reading. Don't someone said X, don't believe it, and be what the terminology, what youngsters call straightforwards. People who get something and just forward it without knowing and thinking. Yes, I agree that research and historical events, what you put, has to be well thought out, well researched, and carefully put down. Agree.
Thank
I
you.
couldn't
And
agree
just
with
one question. The very last question is a big one by Rohan Raj. So he has asked, an author who has not experienced what you have experienced in your professional career, how does be authentic about some of the aspects depicted in your novel, like about ISI, CIA, Russians, and RAW?
So the simple answer will be there are enough non-military characters, non-military authors who have written very convincing military espionage novels. So you do not need to be a politician to write about politics. You do not need to be a military man to write about military. You do not need to be an actor or the cinematographer to write about cinema.
Yeah.
But if you have the background, it does help. That's what I accept. But what I say is that it's a lot of the time, the issue is not about getting the knowledge. The issue is about this has happened to me. I told you when I was writing the first book. I'm just repeating this. I did a lot of research on Kathak dance, and the first book heroine was a Kathak dancer, and I wrote a lot, and I thought I'd done a good job. And the editor, said, "Shibu, you got that? It's a very technical write-up. There's no pulse of the dancer in it." I said, "What's missing?" I said, "The dancer is missing. What you've written is an academic writing. That won't do." Then she said, "You go and meet a Kathak dancer, talk to somebody, watch her dance, then you correct the sentences." So I went again, met a Kathak dancer, saw her dance, teaching some students. Then I talked with her with respect to what I was writing. Then I understood what the editor was saying. The change that I made was one sentence, but it took me 1 month to do that. 1 month effort to make that one sentence change, which brings in the pulse of the character. So finally, like what Mr. Ashoka was asking, it's not about Kalashnikovs and Uzis and AK-47 and .38 and .45 and Makaros and so many weapons which I mentioned in that. It's not about those. It's about the man behind the gun. It's about his heart and his feelings. So while these are important, this will make sense only if you're able to get the pulse of the man. So that part, yes, I do agree. There is a challenge for people who have. It is easier for someone with let's say, a little bit of military experience or domain experience, like someone who writes about police detective novels. Now, everybody is not a CBI or a police guy. There's so many of them who write about crime novels based on police investigations, without knowing being in the police. Some of them may be journalists. It's challenging, I agree, but need not be. You have to have the. Finally, it's in your mind. You have to have the bandwidth. I'm sure you'll be able to take on. I'm sure Rohan, if he wants to write, definitely he'll be able to. If he reads, he should be able to.
Okay, thank you so much for this fantastic session, and a big thank to Professor Ashoke Viswanathan and Shibu. It was a lovely session, and I'm sure the viewers, they loved watching the session. And of course, when I'm going to share, like, this session is live from our page as well. I've shared the online Amazon link on my page too, and for the viewers who would love to purchase a copy of the book. So thank you once again, both of you, and best of luck to Shibu for all your upcoming ventures. Thank you from Mahava Readers and Writers Club. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shashu. Thank you, Shashok. Thank you so much.
Thank
Most
you.
well. Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you.